a new lawsuit alleges that the Uber star rating system is racist and discriminatory. Because today, virtually everything is racist and discriminatory. Looking at this article from NPR, we see that the lawsuit was initiated by a former Uber driver in San Diego, who says that the star rating system disproportionately leads to the firing of people who are not white or who speak with accents. As a result, the lawsuit is asking the court to order Uber to stop using passenger evaluations when deciding whether to ban drivers from the app. Now, you are probably familiar with how Uber does its system. They have a star rating system where you, as a passenger, can rate your Uber driver and give him or her between 1 to 5 stars. And if you get a good Uber driver, presumably you're going to give them 5 stars. Or maybe you won't rate at all because most people are pretty lazy. But what they are saying here is that this star rating system is inherently biased and racist, and so it should be done away with completely. But not just the rating system. There shouldn't be any evaluations whatsoever by the passengers or by the customers. That is not acceptable because apparently it's all racist. The lawsuit says that it constitutes race discrimination as it is widely recognized that customer evaluations of workers are frequently racially biased, and that Uber itself has recognized the racial bias of its own customers. What that is talking about is that previously, I guess Uber didn't want to allow tipping on the app because they professed concern that allowing tipping would discriminate against minority drivers. So they're using that to say that Uber has recognized and admitted that its customers are biased. And because of this bias, they should do away with completely all customer evaluations. Now, think about that for 1 second in another context. Let's say that perhaps you're a waiter at a restaurant, and you think that it's discriminatory if your job is dependent on the customers who you serve. That if you serve them poorly, or they give you bad reviews, or they talk negatively about you to your boss, well, that's just discriminatory and it's not based in reality, because they would, for no other reason, give you a bad customer review. So that's essentially what's going on here. They're alleging that if you are a minority, your chances of getting a bad review are higher, so you should just do away with reviews completely. There shouldn't be any customer evaluations whatsoever, so they have to do something else to determine if you're actually a good driver and doing your job. I doubt they're going to have an Uber employee sit inside the car as you do your runs, so how are they going to know that? I think customer evaluations is the best way to do it, but apparently not. Uber, as you would assume, strongly contests this allegation and says that it's flimsy. In the actual lawsuit, the plaintiff says that he was fired back in October 2015 after his average star rating fell below a 4.6, and he contends that riders gave him bad reviews because of his race. Now, before we look at his actual allegations, a 4.6 rating is actually not that bad. I mean, when you're looking at a 1 to 5 scale, 4.6 is actually pretty high. But I've done a little bit of research because of this report, and most drivers for Uber tend to agree that if your rating gets below a 4.6, as high as that seems, they're going to evaluate if they want to continue using your service. And if they don't, then you're essentially going to be fired. Now, you're not quite employed by Uber. It's not exactly the same thing because they're using you as a contractor, but the idea is similar. You won't be able to do this. You won't be able to get paid. So 4.6, it seems really high, but that's not based on race per se. It's just how they do their business, more or less. So let's look at his actual allegations. I'm sure this driver must have some proof that people are being discriminatory, right? Well, not so much. But before we do that, be sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell. That way you can always stay up to date on news and information just like this. And I'll provide all of the sources that I use in the description below so you can look it up for yourself. So the actual lawsuit says that the plaintiff, Lou, is Asian and from Hawaii and speaks with a slight accent. While driving for Uber, plaintiff noticed passengers appearing hostile to him, which appeared to him to be a result of racial discrimination. So this is what he is seeing, not necessarily how it happened. For example, he noticed riders canceling ride requests after he had already accepted the ride and the rider was able to view his picture. So it's not possible, I guess, that they no longer needed that ride. It had to have been racial discrimination. He also experienced riders asking where he was from in an unfriendly way. Plaintiff alleges that Uber's use of the passenger star rating system to determine terminations had a disparate impact on him as well as other minority drivers across the United States. And this is one thing that really gets me with things like this. In society today, even though people say it's taboo to talk about race, it's really not. You can make allegations like this with virtually no proof, nothing to back it up other than I feel like this happened to me, and now it's a lawsuit, and people are going to agree with this. I'm sure there are countless people, I've already seen them on Facebook, who just take this as gospel. That because this driver claims he was discriminated on based on his race, then that's what must have happened. There is no other possible explanation in their minds because we live in a racist society. That's essentially where they're coming from, and I don't agree with that at all. I'm not saying it's impossible, it certainly is possible there was racial discrimination, but you need to actually prove it. You can't just say people canceled their rides and they asked where I was from. Like that doesn't really work that way. That doesn't prove anything. And this lawsuit comes just weeks before in California, they're going to vote on Proposition 22, which could force companies such as Uber to convert its drivers from independent contractors to employees. Uber and Lyft have said that if this actually happens, they would leave California altogether. So in California, not only is Uber being sued because one individual who was a driver was fired and thinks that he was racially discriminated against, but they're also possibly going to be forced to change their entire structure because that's what people think should happen, even though there are plenty of reasons to get into why that's not necessarily the best idea. I don't have time in this video, but this video was just looking at the fact that, like I said at the beginning, virtually everything is racist. Most people would think that a 5-star rating system is completely fine. But apparently there's racial bias even in that. Any sort of customer evaluation whatsoever now has racial bias and must be eliminated. So if we take this as fact, I don't really know how going forward we're going to know who's doing a good job. Because generally you would ask the customers if they were satisfied and if they received good service. But if we can't do that because they're all racist and biased, well, what do we do? Maybe you have some ideas. Let me know if you do in the comment section below, and let me know what you think about this whole 5-star rating system. I think it's fine. There doesn't seem to be any real racist intent here, but that doesn't really stop people from claiming that it's there. I've heard it said before, and I think I agree with this, that in the United States, the supply for racism does not meet the demand. What that means is that people are alleging all of these things are racist without fact, without truth, and there are countless hoaxes that are being propagated as if it were true. But that's simply not true. America as a whole is a non-racist country. Thank you for watching, sharing, and subscribing. I really appreciate it, and if it's not too much trouble, go ahead and leave a like and a comment. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.